Alrighty. Here we are on a Friday. It's May the 4th there in America, and it's May the 5th here in Australia. So, May the 4th be with you. Are you a Star Wars fan, Ed?
I'm not anymore. I've just had enough. It's overload. I just had it. When it's
too
on
much for you?
when it's on every weekend, and look, after the first two, all the rest are crap. All the rest is just all the rest. They just made it. You can tell they just made it to make easy money.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you don't like it?
Yeah.
That's a big boo for you. That's a big
No,
no
you're
for
right.
you.
Very, very good. Now we're into the sound effects. Cool. The first two movies, yeah. But I stood in line for the very first Star Wars that came out. Yeah. So, I remember back then.
Age there.
I remember, they're selling all those, those little figurines and stuff. I never bought any of them. Boy, fuck. If I had something to do over, one of my biggest regrets in life, I'd go back and I'd load up on those, Luke Skywalker figurines. It'd be worth a fortune today.
You know the story of George Lucas, right? He created Star Wars, of course, and he sold the rights to the movie. He offloaded it, but he kept the rights to the merchandise, and that turned him into a billionaire. And all of the merchandise, the figurines, and all of those sorts of things. So just to be able to have the foresight to understand that was actually going to be such a big thing. And nowadays, with modern day movies, the Avengers and Iron Man and all of those sorts of things, that's a really big thing for kids as well. Remember when my daughter was a bit younger, she loved all of that stuff. And there's a couple of stores nearby here in the local shopping centers that have all of that. And we'd be forever going in there, and she'd be in the shops going, wow. And I'd be like, I kind of don't get it. I like the movies and stuff. They're great movies. I see why kids love them and stuff. I even like them. But I didn't understand the merch. I never understood people walking around with these T-shirts on, and it was just strange to me.
Yeah, I would never do that. I'd never wear, but the figurine business, the merch, that's where a lot of the money is. When my boys are young, they're really into that Pokemon stuff. And I'm talking about
that's what I mean. Like that type of thing is just like massive for kids these days.
Oh yeah. Well, look. So my boys. Okay. So that was during like the original Pokemon phase with the original cards. They had God knows how many thousands of cards, and we would go to this one store where they traded. They wanted to get a certain card because certain cards are more valuable than other ones. And I think I threw them in the trash at some point along the way. But
there's a new show just been released here in Australia on Netflix. It's called Goldie or something like that. The guy is a collectibles dealer, and he's like built a $4 billion business around collectibles. It's amazing, and it's the best business model in the world. It's all on consignment. So he's got this like technology, the auction technology that he has, and it seems to me like they take a 10% commission on the sales that go on there. Sometimes it looks like it varies a little bit, but what happens is every morning these the employees there, they get these packages on their desk, and he's got his Stanley knife and he cuts open the thing, and what's in here, and he's got these cards where he's got these various different things, and they're like, okay, this thing would be worth X, and they go away, put it on the website, sell it for an auction, and because they have all the traffic coming to their website. But the thing is, they never actually pay any money to get this stuff, right? So the stuff comes to them on consignment, sits on their shelf in their warehouse. They have all this security and everything like that. So really innovative show. So right along the lines of what we're talking about. And even if you're not into collectibles, you'll be into the business side of it. You'll be like, how is he flying around in a jet, like his own jet in this plane by himself? And this is a big, big business of what's going on. And there was one episode, the second episode that we watched, he met this guy who's a soccer fan, and he had a Lionel Messi jersey, and Messi kicked a goal in the last 30 seconds of this game or something like that. And he took his shirt off and he was holding it in front of the crowd like this. And this particular soccer fan owned all of these jerseys, and he comes along and goes, I'll sell that for you. We'll be the first one to get more than $100,000 for a soccer jersey here in the United States. And he offloads it for like 400 grand or something like that. And this memorabilia is just massive for these people. It's an interesting industry of what's going on.
There's value in scarcity, right?
Isn't there?
The more value there is, that's why the US dollar is crap.
There is no scarcity.
There's no scarcity.
Welcome to the show, folks. We've got a heavy financial theme today, but it's going to be fun. We've got some really interesting things for you. There's a lot of developments happening, and I think that we're all like that proverbial frog being boiled in the pot. You don't realize the heat's been turned up until it's too late, and I feel like we're in the last 10% of that. So If this is your first time here at The Unspoken Truth, welcome. It's great to have you here. If you're not following us over on Spotify, Twitter, Telegram, and Rumble, we'd encourage you to go and do that. So let's get into today's show. I'll show you what's coming up and what Ed and I are going to be talking about. It's lots of fun. I'm going to talk about the banking crash, which seems to be accelerating. You were bang on the money yesterday, Ed, when we were talking about Pacific West Bank, or Pacific Western Bank rather. They are indeed shopping themselves around to be purchased by other companies out there. So they're the next bank to go under. And you called it here on The Unspoken Truth. We got it out there in the media before it actually has happened. And it seems to me like there's a series of other small banks that are going to be going under pretty soon in your part of the world as well. It's a pretty scary time in financial history. I'm going to tie that together with some cyber warfare stuff that's going on, and I'll share a little bit about what's happening here in Australia and how that is going to be the destruction of all of us. I'm hoping that maybe quantum computing and AI is going to save us, but I don't think we can save ourselves from ourselves. That's the problem that we've got, is that it's a self-inflicted wound that's going to fester into something really nasty and really bad. Ed's got some more analysis on today's market activity, and I'm going to share a little bit about CBDCs and how they're silently rolling out. We touched on that earlier in the weekend. We had a bit of a discussion about that, but I'm going to show you a few things that you may not know about, and I'm going to try and tie a few things together, meaning I'm going to join some dots for you. And in joining those dots, my goal for you is to really understand what's actually happening. And this is happening faster than you could possibly ever have anticipated. And in my mind, that's a really scary proposition. That's something that is accelerating, and there's literally nothing that we can do about it. And I think it might even be the downfall of our societies if they get it wrong. Hopefully, all of the bad things that are there are intended with goodwill, and hopefully the people behind it are not as bad as what we anticipate. But if it does come to pass that they are, it might be the destruction of life as you know it. And it's got nothing to do with a nuclear war or Russia or Ukraine or anything like that. If our financial system collapses and goes away, everything that you know will radically change. So I'm hoping that the people that are in charge and the people that are behind the deep state that running this world actually do know what they're doing. It's a scary proposition. It reminds me of I feel like we're at an injunction in history, at an inflection point in time, if you like. And it reminds me of the TV show, Mr. Robot. Have you ever watched that show?
No. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Mr. Robot with Rami Malek, and that's his first big role. And it kind of loses the plot towards the end, but there's the villain of that show is the evil protagonist called E Corp. And you'd be forgiven for thinking that E Corp was Google or Facebook or some social media company or something like that, but it's not. It's fictitious, right? The whole thing is fictitious. But the idea is that they hack E Corp and they get rid of the overarching control that E Corp has of all of society, and it collapses society and it collapses life as they know it. And it's actually the cure was worse than the disease. And that's where I think we are here now, that maybe the cure that all of these people at the WEF and all of the banksters that control the world, the cure that they think that they have for us might be worse than actually what we have here. And I'm worried that that's actually going to happen. But before we get into any of that, let's start off with a really cheery subject, shall we? That the banking crisis is all a plan. So I'm going to let you lay the foundation, and I'm going to tie that back to the cyber stuff that I'm got going on here. So take it away, Ed, and share with us why you think this banking crisis that's unfolding right now is all a plan for us.
All right, so let's get started. So, is the strings of bank failures that are going on right now part of a larger agenda? Maybe this isn't by accident. Let's talk about it. Now, of course, there are two arguments you can use to describe the current banking crisis that's going on with all these banks that are failing. On the one hand, you could say you could just chalk it up to incompetence, which is absolutely a possibility. But there's another possibility. Maybe this is part of a grand master plan to change the face of our banking system.
No, God, please, no, no, no.
Now, in the United States, 30 years ago, we had 10,894 banks. As of today, we have just a little over 4,000 banks. So quite a big haircut over the last 30 years. So the banking system is starting to become centralized, which is not what you want. You want the banking system to be decentralized. And there's value in having a lot of different banks to choose from, especially in the world of real estate loans and personal loans. Every region has their own different characteristics, their own little differences that make a lot of difference in making decisions about issuing loans. Allow me to read a quote to you from Henry Kissinger. If you control the food, you control a nation. If you control the energy, you control a region. If you control the money, you control the world. I believe that's what is ultimately behind what's going on in the markets. Now, when you have a large decentralized financial system, it's hard for the Federal Reserve, for the central bank, to control it, right? Because you have a lot more banks that are doing their own thing. So the idea is to whittle that down to a small number of banks, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a case in point. Let's look at JP Morgan. Okay, so let's just all agree that JP Morgan is the big dog in the financial industry. It's the guy, it's the man, right? Now, there was a law passed in 1994 that said no one bank can control more than 10% of the financial market. Now, JP Morgan, prior to last week, was already at their 10% limit. Now, the reason why they set that limit, of course, was to avoid monopolies, right? To avoid any one bank being too powerful. But in the recent acquisition by JP Morgan of First Republic, they took over an additional $100 billion worth of assets. Well, by law, they shouldn't be allowed to do any more expansion. But apparently, when the laws don't fit the agenda of the powers to be, they can apparently ignore laws. So JP Morgan just got even bigger. So let's look at a couple of charts that illustrates the financial health of the small banks versus the large banks. Okay, so this is from the Federal Reserve, and this shows the total cash assets for small domestically chartered commercial banks, the small banks, right? And you can see what happened there after 2008. If you look back at that, that up and down gray bar, you see the big expansion after the financial crisis of 1998. Why was this going on? Because of the bailouts that were coming from the government and coming from the taxpayers, right? And then look what happened in 2020. Just a massive explosion. Of course, this was the worldwide flu that went on. There's sending out all sorts of stimulus checks to people, and people put it in the bank. And a massive move up. Now, since then, see a massive decline down. So from a percentage basis, the small banks have 6% worth of their assets in cash. These are the large banks. The last chart was for the small banks. This is for the large banks. And you can see that the pattern is identical to the charts for the small banks. However, if you look at the far right of the chart, the current ratio of cash to assets is 13%. So remember, for the small banks, it was 6%. For the large banks, it's 13%, which means the larger banks have a lot more money. So that's how they can afford to acquire all of these smaller banks. So this ongoing process of gobbling up these small banks as they fail can continue because these banks have so much cash that they can use to do it with. Now, let's remember why these small banks are failing. The primary problem is the dramatic rise in interest rates. So why does rising interest rates make banks go out of business? Well, because these banks, they put assets on their books primarily like U.S. Treasuries, right? And bonds have an inverse relationship with interest rates. So as interest rates go up, the value of their bonds on their books go down and destroys their balance sheets. So as these small banks go out of business one by one, and they are the most vulnerable, right? They're going to go out of business before the big banks do. And as they go out of business, they're going to be acquired by the larger banks. And let's take a look at a chart to help you conceptualize this process. But as these banks start to consolidate, they end up in the larger banks, namely banks like Citicorp, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, etc. So the net result is you have fewer banks. So it'll be much easier for the central bank to control, a handful of banks instead of, thousands of banks. And I believe that is the real end game here. This is all moved toward centralizing the financial industry. That's eventually going to lead us to CBDCs and full control of our personal sovereignty. This is what it's all leading to. And I think this is not just going to be a US-based issue. This is a global issue. You're going to see all countries around the world going through the same process. In the end, there are people out there who want a one world government, okay? And this is part of that process. All right, so a lot of you might think that I'm a conspiracy nut, but I think I just made my case, and I will leave it to you to draw your own conclusion. All right, so let's open it for discussion. All right, so Robbie, you want to come back in here? So when Jerome Powell is crying over these banks going out of business, I'm sure these are just crocodile tears. I'm sure he doesn't mind at all. Matter of fact, I think behind the scenes, after they close the doors and he makes sure everyone's cameras are off, they're probably popping champagne corks. They're probably cheering this on. I don't think they see this as a failure. They see this as a success, because I think
you're right.
Yeah.
And well done on that report, and well done on getting your thoughts collected like that, because I think it's really concise in what you're doing. And the point that you're making is there's just too many banks, and it's easier for the Federal Reserve to control just that handful of banks. So let's make a couple of things abundantly clear to people in case they don't know it. It's not federal and it's not a reserve. It's a cartel of banks that got together, and they're the people that are setting the policy for the entire world. And really, it's not that many people. It's like 40 or 50 people. So they're the people, those banksters, and that's another way to say gangsters, they're just banksters, if you've never heard that terminology before. They're the people that are in charge. And when you look at it, it's just systematically swallowing up the competitors that are there. And those competitors are really a non-starter. They're really no factor for those larger organizations, but they're still there and they're still encroaching on their business. So the only solution, when you think about it from a large corporation's perspective, if you just step out of the banking sector for a second, if you're a larger company and you see new competitors entering a market, you've got a couple of opportunities to do something there. The first one is to compete with them directly and just put them out of business, because you are bigger, more powerful, got more spend, and you can absorb losses for longer, especially if they're encroaching into your market. Or you can fold them into your business by acquiring them. And the banking system is no different to any other sector of a market. And that's exactly what's going on here. But that seems, in my mind, tell me what you think here, Ed, that seems to be accelerating for me.
Oh, it is accelerating. Now, this playbook has been around for a while. This has been in the works. Now, Rob is going to be talking about the CBDCs pretty soon, and we have both talked about CBDCs for quite a while now, ad nauseum. And CBDCs, they're imminent now. They're all ready to go, and right now they're just looking for a big event. So I think this whittling down process is laying the groundwork for introducing the CBDCs. In effect, what these small group of elitists want to do is they want to reset the entire financial system, okay, both per country and globally. And in order to do that, they've got to do it in stages. It's the old boiling frog effect, right? They've got to lay the groundwork. And we've already had, look, it's hard for us to get money out of the bank, right? It's hard to do business these days in actual cash. How many times have you gone to the store, and how many stores don't accept cash anymore, and getting money out of the bank? So the movement toward a cashless society is to get you used to the idea of not dealing with cash. So look, there are big plans in place here. It's on a grand scale, and we're in the final stages here. And meaning is they've got to destroy the current existing financial system. Hence, these banks are being whittled down. That's what's going on, people. It's serious. If you're scared, you should be. This is something everybody should be not only afraid of, but you should be really, really angry about. And you got to prepare for it.
Yeah, it's an alarming time in history. We're coming to the conclusion of the fiat system, and that ain't going to be a smooth ride. in any way that you look at it, that's not going to be a smooth ride. But look, hopefully, folks, here on The Unspoken Truth, you're getting the information that you need to make decisions and to protect yourself against these problems and these things. So in the next segment, so let's just kick over to that, I'm going to share a little bit about cyber warfare and why that's potentially going to destroy us all and what's actually going on. And I'll share with you some things that are happening here in Australia as well that you may not have heard about. So I'm just going to boot us out of the stream here. I'm going to share our screen. So I'll just come on over here and share screen. And I'm going to share my entire screen. So I'm going to kick off by sharing a video here with you that's from the World Economic Forum.
The COVID-19 pandemic has shaken our economies and societies to the core and shown us how vulnerable we are to biological threats. In the digital world, similar risks are being overlooked right now. A cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics would spread faster and further than any biological virus. Its reproductive rate would be around 10 times greater than what we've experienced with the coronavirus. To give you an idea, one of the fastest worms in history, the 2003 Slammer sapphire worm, doubled in size approximately every 8.5 seconds, infecting over 75,000 devices in 10 minutes and almost 11 million devices in 24 hours. Fortunately, at least until now, cyber attacks have not impacted our health the way pandemics have, but the economic damages, and therefore the impact they have had on our daily lives, have been equal and sometimes even greater. You see, the only way to stop the exponential propagation of a COVID-like cyber threat is to fully disconnect the millions of vulnerable devices from one another and from the internet. All of this in a matter of days. A single day without the internet would cost our economies more than $50 billion, and that's before considering the economic and societal damages should these devices be linked to essential services such as transport or healthcare. As the digital realm increasingly merges with our physical world, the ripple effects of cyber attacks on our safety just keep on expanding at a faster pace than what we're preparing for. COVID-19 was known as an anticipated risk. So is the digital equivalent. Let's be better prepared for that one. The time is now.
They create some pretty slick videos there, that's for sure, and they know how to get their message out there and they strike at the heart of your emotions, right? They're wanting you to feel something about that, to go, oh my God, that is like, I didn't know that IT viruses and worms could spread like that. Oh my God, that's scary. And what they're doing is they're manipulating your emotions to point you towards the narrative that they're wanting to perpetuate. And the narrative that they want to perpetuate is that cybersecurity is the next big problem and the next worldwide problem that we're going to face. But don't worry, we're here to save you. We're here to solve that problem for you. You don't have to worry about anything because we're prepared this time. We weren't prepared last time, but we were prepared this time. But the reality is, when you rewind the clock to 2018, 2019, the WEF, the World Health Organization, and all of the so-called unelected powers that be were running exercises about a SARS-like outbreak. And now they're running exercises about a cyber attack type outbreak. So I just want to continue with the screen share here, folks, and I want to show you the unspoken truth behind it and some of the things that they're actually saying. So I can just find a couple of headlines pretty quickly. You know, a catastrophic global cyber attack could happen in the next 2 years, the World Economic Forum. And so that's from earlier in the year. So these things have been reported on for a couple of months now. And I want to try and help you to join the dots and give you the unspoken truth about these particular topics, because it's happening and it's unfolding in real time and you don't realize what's going on. So here's another one from just a couple of months ago: surprising cyber focus on the World Economic Forum. Why are they talking about that? A series of reports released at the WEF gathering in Davos the past week, the outlook for the global economy and for cybersecurity looked gloomy. So if we keep going, World Economic Forum officials warn of global instability could lead to a catastrophic cyber event. So we've never ever had in our lifetimes as much global instability as we have now. We're staring down the barrel of a nuclear war. The world has never been closer to a nuclear exchange than it is today. The Kremlin was attacked yesterday, for heaven's sake, twice. So it's like unbelievable what's going on. There couldn't be any more global instability, and there's no better enemy than the Russians. The Russians are just the ideal enemy for these freaks that run the world, because they are known as cyber hackers and they are known to create huge cyber discourse. And it's even written into their doctrine, folks, that the order of battle that they have is space, cyber, and then EMP. So the first thing they're going to do is take out our space-based assets. Then they're going to use cyber to destroy our infrastructure, to destroy the energy grid, the water, the health systems, and everything that we have that supports and underpins our society. So the WEF is saying that global instability could lead to that catastrophic event. If I keep going, this is the WEF website, and how does your industry compare when it comes to the financial losses and exposures of cyber threats? So I've done all the reading and watched all the videos for you. So they look at here, government and healthcare are the most impacted. So I'm showing you this chart here to say, here's the percentage of probability of it's going to happen, and this is what it would cost here. So just have a look. Public admin, healthcare, education, financial systems, accommodation, professional services, information, manufacturing, retail. But up here is the government ones. These are the big ones. Here in Australia, we've had the biggest cyber attacks we've had in the last year. So this is the data breaches in Australia from 2018 to 2023. And if I scroll down here to the most recent ones, so these are the things that have happened. So Rio Tinto is a mining company. Of course, that's infrastructure. But we've had TAFE being breached. We've had Medicare. We've had Latitude Financial Services. If I come back over to here, we've had our health system compromised severely. Millions of records gone. We've had public administration where governments have been hacked. We've had financial services industries over here. That's what Latitude is, one of the biggest financial services company here in Australia. And then we've also had manufacturing, which is here in Rio Tinto over here. Commonwealth Bank has been hacked. Here, customer data here. So the good guys here warn of customer leaks. Where did my little link go? Customer is retail here. So everything that the World Economic Forum is saying about threats and about cybersecurity is actually coming to pass. And if you scroll down and you look at the breaches for the year before, so you're looking at Telstra. There's a massive Telstra breach here in Australia at the end of last year, which compromised like literally millions of people's records. If you have any sort of health insurance, or you're connected to a mobile phone, or you get a credit card in your wallet, you've been hacked. Yeah. And when the companies come out and they say that our company has been hacked, it's actually technically incorrect. I've been hacked. Yeah. You've got my information. My information is now on the dark web. My name, my address, my email, my phone numbers, my credit card numbers, my health records, all of the things that are associated with my digital ID are now in somebody else's hands. They've been sucked up and then they've been absorbed by somebody else like that. So cybersecurity is something that is either perpetrated by the Communist Party of China, the CCP, the North Koreans, or the Russians. Yeah, so they're the three adversaries that we're up against, and they're the people that are causing all of this trouble. And the WEF are quite right in pointing out that that is one of the biggest threats to us. But I also think that if you look at this at a micro level, you see it for what it is, and you go, "Oh, they're hacked again. They're incompetent. It's a data breach." Or you were complaining before we got going here that you had to update something, and update something is because there's gaps in it. And there's holes in it that developers have found that you can go in there and, hey, if there's a gap here, then we need to plug that gap. So we need to put the update out. That's why your iPhone has an update like 25 times a week, because there's continuous flaws in it like that. If you notice, Android doesn't have that many updates because it doesn't need to be updated because the CIA just listen to everything you're saying on your phone. So, right, it's hacked already. I don't know how we can update the hack. That's already there. I don't care about it. Whatever. There's nothing you can do. It's just part of living in this world that we live in. But look, I think the cybersecurity threat that we face goes hand in hand with the collapse of the banking system. And that ties back to the central bank digital currencies, which I'll close out today's show with and explain to you how you can join the dots with all of these things. So they seem like they're separate and they're isolated, and they are, but they're all also very intimately interconnected. And that's because we live in a globalized world as well. There's no banking that happens on planet Earth that doesn't touch New York. If there's an international transaction, at some point it's in New York for maybe just nanoseconds as it touches that computer, but it's going through the computers in that part of the world. And if that goes away because of a cyber attack, because the grid goes down, because servers are destroyed for a variety of different reasons, then life as you know it will come to a complete stop. It'll come to an end, and it's something that is happening right now in front of us. We've never seen here in Australia so many cyber attacks. I can guarantee you that several people in Australia have been hacked on multiple occasions now. So if you have got a Telstra phone in your pocket and then you were part of Medibank as your health system, then you've been hacked twice. And then if you were part of the Good Guys and you purchased something from that retail outlet, one of the major retail outlets here in Australia, you were hacked again. That's the third time. And then it just keeps going and it keeps going. And like, how are we so vulnerable? And then the government is being attacked every day as well. And you've seen the reports where I think it's one of those FBI bosses. He's in a committee somewhere, and he's like, every 20 minutes, I've got to assign a new agent to go and deal with the CCP trying to attack some company or some infrastructure over here. So it is a very real threat. And in the Chinese doctrine, it's known as unrestricted warfare. So warfare doesn't just happen in a kinetic sense on a battlefield with tanks and guns and warships and airplanes. It happens on all aspects of our life now. And that's what they're using against us. And the WEF are saying that massive global instability is going to be the cause of the biggest cyber attack and cyber breaches ever. And I think that they're going to use the war in Russia and Ukraine to say, oh, the Russians have done this and they've collapsed the system. But, wink, wink, that's actually not true. What do you think, Ed?
The WEF predicting that there is going to be a catastrophic cyber attack, that's a pretty bold prediction. I mean, you got to hand it to them. That's kind of like me predicting that it's going to snow here in Minnesota and come wintertime. So good for them for sticking their necks out. That's the thing about the WEF is they never talk about a problem without having the solution all teed up for you. They always have the solution. In fact, I'm sure they sit around and they have the solution before they have the problem. First, they decide, well, what do we want to accomplish? And now we got to think of a problem in order to get people to do that. And that's how they've gotten the world so scared about global warming and climate change, and that eventually led to the poor people in the Netherlands having to close down all their farms in the sake of global warming. They're having everyone buy electric cars by 2030 for the sake of global warming. So they have a way of having a solution for every problem. It just so happens that every solution is god awful for the average person. Although the elites are not going to suffer that much. They're going to have us eating bugs, but meanwhile, I suspect they're still going to have their T-bone steaks whenever they want them. So that is what's going on here. There is a global effort going on here, guys. Rob and I have gone back and forth about who the most evil person in the world is. Rob knows who I chose as the most evil person in the world, and it's not Bozo the Clown either. It's and we're going to be talking about this more and more in upcoming episodes, guys. So please stay tuned, because it all does tie together. When we talk about these individual topics, they're all part of the same tapestry, and it is important that you know as much as you can about each one of these little aspects. The financial industry, that's one very big piece of this global effort. And and instead, we don't want you to be pawns in this. We don't want you to suffer from it. And regarding cyber attacks, money these days are largely zeros and ones. The money you have sitting in your bank account, your actual physical money is not there. It's represented on a ledger in the form of zeros and ones. So cyber attack, I mean, how easy is it? That's what cyber attacks do. They go in and they steal those zeros and ones. Another reason, but you know what? These are not zeros and ones.
Baby.
All the more. This is one more reason why this is the only actual money in the world. So reduce your exposure to your bank, put some of the money into gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. And anyway, so.
They're the rules to keep you safe. I just want to close out this little segment here by maybe helping some skeptics to think about this. I probably should have started this off to reduce the skeptic and keep him longer. But look, you'd be forgiven for thinking that, you guys are just conspiracy theorists. You're trying to read the tea leaves, but you see what you want to see. But the reality is we live in a very different type of society than what you think. You don't actually live in a democracy. You may have your say on a ballot paper and you elect that person. But once that person is elected, that person is an instrument of the government. And the government is a big machine. And that person, as the individual that you voted for, really has no giant sway over anything. And in fact, the system that we live under, no one person has giant sway over anything unless you're Vladimir Putin or you're Saddam Hussein. That's the only way that that happens in a dictatorship. But even then, those people don't get involved in the detail and the minutiae of day-to-day activity. The system that we live in, and I'll prove to you that this is the system we live in, is a technocracy. And a lot of people don't know what a technocracy is. And people think that, no, it's a democracy. No, it's a communist society or a socialist society, or we're conservative or we're liberals or something like that. But actually, no, that's not true. We live in a modern day technocracy. And what a technocracy is when the boffins, the PhDs, the doctors, the scientists, and the engineers are the ones that make decisions about what goes on in society. And it makes kind of sense in some ways, because if I'm an engineer that builds bridges, I'm not going to go and ask a dentist how to build the bridge. I'm going to ask the engineer that builds bridges how to fix the problem that we've got with the bridge, or how to build a new one. That makes sense to actually do that. That's how modern society actually works. And at a normal person's level, that definitely works like that. That's how business and commerce is transacted. You hire a specialist to actually do what it is that you need to do. And you do that on terms and agreements that are agreeable to everybody. And if there's no agreement in something, or something goes wrong, then we go to the courts and we thrash it out until we get an agreement, or we sort the problems out. But when you look at it from a political level and from a government level, you can see that we live in a technocracy, because the last couple of years has proven beyond all doubt that the governments and the politicians were not in control. The people that you look to as your leaders, whether it's your prime minister or your president or the ministers that you think are in charge, are actually not in charge, because those people turn to the experts, the doctors, the scientists, and the engineers for the solutions. And there's nothing that a politician can do, because the politician is not the scientist that knows about how to fix a bridge or how to create a solution for a problem that's in front of them. They don't know how to do that. They turn to the experts to actually do that. And the politicians are the instruments to actually deliver that. And we see politicians on a daily basis lying to us and making mistakes, because the people behind them are telling them the wrong things to do. And they're like, whoa, we've got to try and pull that back. And with the benefit of new information, I've changed my mind. You don't realize it, but the society that we live in is a technocracy. And you can extrapolate the technocracy all the way to its end. Yeah. And it might not feel like it's a bad thing to us. Like, well, how else would you live in the world? How else would we engage in the world? And the reality is that's how we engage in the world. But when you look at it from a political level, it starts to become really dark and sinister, because we can play this out to its nth. And where we see that playing out to its nth is in China, where they have a technocracy in place, where scientists, engineers, and people that run technology tell the politicians that this is how it will work. Politicians go to those people and say, this is what we want. We want facial recognition for every single person in China. And we want that everywhere. And we want millions of cameras everywhere in China to track and trace every single person's activity. And the reason that we want that is because we don't fear our external enemies. The Chinese Communist Party fears an uprising from its people. And the only way to control the uprising from its people is to track and trace every single little aspect of every single person's life. And if you think that a technocracy is a good thing, all you have to do is go and look over to China to see exactly how those people are treated in concentration camps, forced organ harvesting, and all sorts of dissent and crushing of religion and personal beliefs. None of that is allowed, because all of that is a threat to the leadership that's in place. And those people there are quite different to the people that we have here. So you elect a leader here in your country, and that country is a servant to you. They serve you. If you ask a politician, what do? They'll say, I serve my constituents, because my constituents elected me and I serve them, and I do the best of my ability to actually do that. But in a technocracy, the people that are in charge, the politicians that are making decisions based on what scientists and engineers tell them to do, are not servants of the people. You are a subject of that person. And where we're moving to And this cyber warfare, this banking crisis, and all the things that we're talking about today are leading us to be subjugated by these kings and queens of the modern day. So it's a very different way of looking at society. And not a lot of people take the time to actually look at this, because you just think you live in a democracy and you get in your car and you go to work and you go, man, why is petrol so expensive? Or why are groceries so expensive? And it's not something that you spend much time looking at. But our society is changing radically, and it's changed in the last 3 years, and it's never, ever going back to what it was. It's never going back. It's a scary time in history.
Well, amen. I can improve upon that, Rob. Look, this is kind of the baseline, I think, of our channel. Is we want to peel back the propaganda that you hear in the mainstream media and kind of zero you in, get you past the smoke screen. So the WEF is sounding the alarm in cybersecurity. Well, why? The follow-up question is very important. Is why are they bringing that up? Why? Are they just magnanimous? Are they just, humanitarians? Or could there be an ulterior motive behind? And I think a healthy dose of skepticism is warranted, especially these days. So stay tuned, because we're going to keep telling you the unspoken truth.
We absolutely are. All right, let's shift gears. What have you got for us in today's market, Ed? Why don't you take it away, mate?
Okay, well, I hate to be a broken record and talking about the market so much, but look, this is a pressing issue going on right now. All the things that Rob and I have been talking about for months, even years on our channels, they're coming to a head. Our predictions are playing out. And we already told you all along that when they do happen, they're going to happen fast. Well, here it is. Things are unraveling fast. And you don't have time anymore to procrastinate. You don't have any more time to say to yourself, oh, I'll get to it. No, you have to start taking measures now. So let's start by playing a little clip from yesterday's Federal Reserve announcement. Now, yesterday was Federal Reserve Day. Yesterday, they announced a rate hike, and they always give commentary along with it. And usually, they put the best possible spin on whatever they say, because they want to answer to the markets. All right, so let's watch a clip, and then we'll discuss it afterward. I'll get screen share. Okay, so Rob, do me a favor. So when I play the clip, could you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down to make sure so that I know that you can hear the sound?
Now, over the past 6 7 now, and going forward is going to be what's happening with credit tightening. Are small and medium-sized banks tightening credit standards, and is that having an effect on loans, on lending? And so we can begin to assess how that fits in with monetary policy. That'll be an important thing.
Peter, if it has an effect, let us be clear. And I know you have said specifically that everything that was built, meaning every investment that was built on a foundation of 0% interest rates, which we had for very long, will crash. Can you be specific about exactly what?
Well, one thing in particular are the banks. I warned for years that the banks would start collapsing for the precise reason that they're collapsing now. The Fed kept interest rates at zero for so long. That's what allowed these financial institutions to load up on overpriced, low-yielding treasuries, mortgage-backed securities, and other loans. Plus, U.S. government auditors from the Fed, FDIC, they encourage the banks to buy these long-term treasuries and mortgage-backed securities because they gave favorable accounting treatment. The banks didn't have to mark them to market as long as they could pretend they would hold them to maturity. So the entire house of cards was erected by the Fed and the U.S. government.
Okay.
What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, right? Duh.
Peter Schiff is coming to us from his bathroom there and in a public toilet somewhere, but he's got the message, man. I don't care where he's telling me that message from because he's on the money.
I mean, the issues going on in the banking system today were so foreseeable. You and I have been talking about these exact issues for many, many, many months. We predicted this would happen. And I'm just some schlub in Minnesota. I think this is what happens when you put those policies in place. This is the natural consequences of your actions. And one thing I want to point out there is even Jerome Powell was saying he expects a corporate credit crunch coming. Okay, so that's going to add another layer to the upcoming recession that we're going to have, or maybe even a depression. Banks are going to start cutting. Look, if they haven't already, I promise you, your banks are going to start cutting your limits on your credit cards. So they probably have already done it. And banking, business accounts, they're going to have their credit lines slashed. So credit is going to tighten. Everybody's credit, especially in the corporate world, they're going to have the credit limits tightened. That means no more job hiring, and the current jobs are probably going to be cut. Factories are going to be closed down. So there are a lot of ripple effects to the financial system falling apart. But this is all so foreseeable. This is all man-made stuff. That's why, I think since this is so obvious, this is so predictable, that this could very well be by design. That this is marching toward a certain endpoint that the powers to be want. And
you sound like a conspiracy nut when you say that. If you step outside yourself, you sound. But actually, if you rewind the clock and look at it, the Fed goes, "Oh, we got to put the interest rates at zero," and then somebody in there's going, "Really? We got to do that at zero?" And then remember, the interest rates were negative, and all of this has all been done before. It's all been tried before. It's been tried before in Japan, and in the Japanese economy, it actually was very, very destructive for their economy, and it caused all sorts of problems. And it's okay. You've got to reduce interest rates because you're trying to create stimulation in the economy because of all these things that have gone wrong, and you're trying to fix all these problems, for sure. But these people they're not dumb. They know that if this stays for an extended period of time, people are going to get used to it. And then eventually, when it comes home to roost, the chicken comes home to roost, we're going to have to start cranking those interest rates. Well, I saw a chart earlier today. I meant to share it with you, that it was like the interest rates were here, and then they went down like this, and then they went across the bottom of the page for zero, and then they went back up, and they're right back where they were. I can't remember the time frame, but I think it's like 5 years or something like that.
Yeah, probably about 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just the dip in there. And it's like, well, what did you think was going to happen? At some point, this has to go back up. Interest rates can't stay at zero forever. Like, what did you think was going to happen when it was going to go back up? And to your point, to your exact point, they're predicting that, okay, if we keep it here for 3 years, this is what happened. No, not long enough. Let it keep going a bit longer. And here we are now. They're going, turning up that meter for the interest rates. And here we are at this 5.25%, right? In the US, I think what it was.
These banks, when they had all this cash on hand from the stimulus checks that came in from the worldwide flu, they had to do something. They had a lot of money. They had more money than they literally knew what to do with. So they thought they were being good stewards by buying U.S. Treasury bills. They were actually doing a conservative thing. We'll just load up in U.S. Treasuries, because this was the message out of the Federal Reserve: be smart with your customers' money. Don't gamble with it. All right, we'll buy U.S. Treasuries. How's that? Beautiful. So they load up on these U.S. Treasuries, and so they were doing the right thing. And then what happens? They start raising rates at the fastest rate in history.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happens to the value of bonds when interest rates go up?
Goes down. That's the inverse relationship right there.
And that's what's happening right now. Well, the Federal Reserve should know what's going to happen to their own bonds when they raise interest rates. I mean,
Jerome Powell's not going, what do you think would happen?
You knew.
You knew like 10 years ago, man.
Somebody do a study and let me know what happened. What happened? It's so stupid. This is why, listen, it's one of two things. They're either really incompetent, or this is a plan. This is part of a plan. And
I think it's a bit of both. It's actually a plan, but they deliberately put these people in place that seem stupid to you, and they're like the political elite. And the political elite of this country here are absolute morons. I look at our prime minister. I look at the ministers that are in charge. I look at the politicians that are in charge and think you don't know your ass from your elbow. You couldn't even run a chook raffle in a pub on a Sunday afternoon, for heaven's sake. How are you managing this economy? How are you coming up with these ideas and these deliberate self-inflicted wounds that are happening to us? And that's because they're instruments of the technocracy behind it.
Hey.
I'm going to get us cancelled. Cut that out now, pal.
Hey, listen, you guys elected the guy. I know you pulled the lever for him, right, Rob? You guys elected
Listen, man, anything's better than ScoMo, yeah? Even Albo.
All right, let me just for the fun of it, let's take a look at the chart, just for illustrative purposes. This is a chart of the global reserve currency throughout history, and this goes back to 1450, and you can see they took turns. Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, France, Britain, USA, and they were all the reserve currencies for similar periods of time.
Didn't last long, huh?
No, and it's our turn at the moment, from 1921 to where. Okay, so people who think that the U.S. dollar has to keep its reserve status, people who think that the monetary system cannot change, well, take a look at this chart. It happens on a regular basis. There's no particular reason why we have to go on indefinitely. Empires fall, and what's the number one reason for empires falling, Rob? You know the answer to this.
I don't know. You tell me.
Inflation.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. They didn't fall because they were taken over by competing.
I was going to say greed.
You could probably draw that line there, right? But no, inflation. The economy, economics, is the reason why all these big empires have ever failed, including Rome. Rome fell because of inflation. Okay, and trust me, when look, there's so much I'd love to talk about. But we talked about de-dollarization. When these dollars start coming back to America because of these BRICS alliances and people stop using the U.S. currency, that money is going to come flooding back. Most U.S. currencies that are in existence exist outside of our borders. So as these countries start sending their dollars back to us, that flood is going to. That's what inflation is. Too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's the definition of inflation. So we have been able to export our inflation for quite a while through our dollar policies, but now it looks like we're not going to be able to get away with that for too much longer. So, damn it.
Get some gold and silver.
Get some gold and silver. A funny story. This won't be long. I wanted to tell you a funny story. So you know that my son. I'll keep the relevant.
Which one is it?
But he is a worker bee. He's not that creative about what he does with his money. He keeps all of his money in the bank. Right. So last month I finally got him to pull some of his money out. So you got to get some money out of your bank. Look, my kids never watch my videos. They never listen to me. They don't, what do they care? I'm their dad, so why should they listen to me? But finally, after hammering, he finally convinced him. Now, I never asked him how much money he has at the bank. It's none of my business. I'm kind of weird about that, But he comes home with the bank that one day, and I said, "So how'd it go?" He said, "Okay, well, they gave me X number of dollars," and I was like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, and I got to go back next week for the rest." And I didn't say I didn't say anything. He said, "Yeah, but Dad, I didn't expect him to have all of the." And he said the number, and I was like, "Holy shit! I got to raise this kid's rent. He has all." So God bless him. He's been squirreling away his money. He's been saving his money. He's been saving. But it's all in the bank. And
right. Well, where else would you put it, right? If you don't know any different, where else are you going to put it?
Yeah. So he did get a little more than half of it out. Now today I showed him the chart for U.S. Bank, and I said, "This is why I want you to get him." So today I saw his eyes go up. So I think I'm going to get him. I've been trying to get him to get the rest of his money out of the bank and get it into gold and silver. So so he's starting to make moves. But for everyone out there, listen, you got to do it. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. It's not financial advice. You know the disclaimer, right? But it's friendly advice. It's one friend to a million other friends out there. So it's life advice.
I love it. It's definitely it's a good story as well, right? Because it's a story of somebody being kind of woken up to it. They don't realize, and it's a good thing that it's your son as well, right? They don't realize the exposure that they have and the things that can go wrong. And it's interesting because he goes to go and get his money out, his money, by the way. And yeah, I'll give you half, and you have to come back next week for the other half. What? I didn't put it in there half at a time. Like, come on, give it back. And yeah, so it just shows you that it's actually you're very exposed. That highlights how exposed you are, and you don't realize it. And to your point, he's just got his money in the bank. Well, where else are you going to put it? And if he doesn't know how to buy gold and silver, and he's not sure about that, and he's not really investing,
I've got him set up at 7K metals, so he has a way of doing it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. He's all set.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, if you didn't know about that, or you didn't know, like, okay, he's gold and silver, but gold and silver doesn't go up and down, and people don't realize that it's just a store of value, right? And you're putting your money where.
Well, money you have sitting in the bank is a guaranteed loss.
Exactly, but if you got it in your hand, like you show there on the camera, you got the gold and silver.
And one last point before you circle this. Okay, so remember, the money you have in the bank is actually not your money.
It's not yours. You're the creditor.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the scary stuff. All right, let's shift gears to the last segment here. We've been talking about central bank digital currencies and talking a little bit about that in the last week. And I just want to show you a couple of slides and show you a few websites about some things that you may not know about. Ed mentioned this earlier in the week about Unicoin, and Unicoin has been rolled out. So this is quite sinister stuff. We talk about the end of the dollar. Ed shows us a chart showing us that, the USD has been reserve currency for 94 years. That's going to go away soon. It'll be someone else's turn. Look at this. Unicoin, Digital Currency Money Authority, DCMA, Universal Monetary Unit. This thing is like sinister as hell, right? The DMCA is a world leader in the advocacy of digital currency innovations for monetary authorities. Our mission is to enable trade globalization through the monetary integration of international payments and settlements while strengthening national economies. So let me just join the dots here for you, just with a couple of different websites, right? So this website here, Being Crypto, is like an announcement here. It's saying the DMCA is a private organization that advocates for the advancement of digital currencies in central banks and money systems. According to a press release, I won't show you that because it's just more of the same. Its executive team has been working with governments and central banks on blockchain in digital currency and cryptography since 2013. And there's a series of reasons why they say that the reason that Bitcoin never got up and it never worked and other cryptos never worked. And this is the reason why this will work. So these guys have been working with the central banksters on blockchain solutions. We know that Ripple has been working with central banks to be that settlement system to actually make it happen. So when we talk about central bank digital currencies, this is the type of thing that is going to sit, and it's going to be the overarching thing. So this is, in my prediction, and Ed's as well, this is what will be the world's reserve currency. Something like Unicoin that is controlled by the unelected monopoly of the WEF, and the International Monetary Fund. Those people are the ones that are going to control this. And the way that they control it is through central bank digital currencies. So in a quick Google search, how many countries in the world have a CBDC? 114 countries. So there's 193 countries in the world, not including Palestine or the Vatican City. So 195 countries when you include those two as well. So I believe that once we have this number, that's the number to look out for. Once we reach 195 countries or 193 countries, that's when we're going to see this change completely. And this is, the Digital Currency Money Authority introduces a global digital banking framework for crypto 2.0. They make it sound nice, but this sounds very sinister to me. I don't know about you, but this is something that is definitely rolling out, and it's something that's going to change the world as we know it. It's happening, and it's you're the frog in the pot, and they're boiling you, and it's just happening in slow time. I remember, must have been 18 months ago, that I read an article. I remember Googling, does Australia have a central bank digital currency? And the Federal Reserve here in Australia tried it, and they ran a trial, and their conclusion of the trial was, no, it's all too hard. And no, we're not going to be doing something like that. But now we're moving towards those systems. And the reason that we're moving towards those systems is because the people that rule the world and the people that control all the money are moving towards those systems. They're moving towards crypto 2.0 and central bank digital currencies. And you might be asking, why would they be moving to crypto? Like, what? Why are they doing that? And it's because it's blockchain, right? So banking systems are just ledgers, and crypto is just a ledger. It's a distributed ledger across millions of computers that says, I put a transaction in, and when the transaction is processed on the blockchain, the consensus is that all of the computers on the blockchain say that Rob took $10 out of his wallet and gave it to Ed. Now Ed has Rob's $10. And then the consensus in the ledger makes sure that it's immutable. It can never change. So if the IMF, the WEF, and the people that control the world and the world's financial system, you know, the Federal Reserves of the world and the central banks of the world are moving towards a blockchain system, an immutable ledger, that's a good thing. Yeah, I believe that's a really good thing because that rationalizes everything across the entire world. But the problem is the people behind it are really, really nasty and not very nice. And they're the ones that are seeking to control us. And I come back to what I was saying before about a technocracy. So these people are the technocrats. They're the banking technocrats. What on earth does Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, or Sleepy Joe Biden know about the central bank digital currency crypto 2.0 reboot and that type of banking system, how settlements work? They don't know anything about that. They might have periphery knowledge of it. They've had conversations and heard about it. But the reality is if they're wanting to know more about it, they're going to say, hey, bring in an expert. Who's the expert in that? Bring him over here. Come and brief me. And that expert gives him a high level 50,000 foot brief of the 3 key points because the Prime Minister doesn't want to know, or the President doesn't want to know any more than 3 points. So the people that are running this whole thing are the technocrats, and they're using the politicians as the instrument of implementation. And we are no longer being served by politicians. We are now being subjugated by the politicians through the technocrats. And that's actually what's unfolding in front of us right now. And I believe that the countdown clock that we could have is once 193 countries have central bank digital currencies and they've got their infrastructure in place because they don't want to leave anyone behind because they then won't be able to transact in the world. That's when you're going to see this thing roll out.
Okay, well, I predict that the starting gun for introducing these digital currencies, which are all ready to go, by the way, all the testing has been done, guys. They're all ready to go. They're on the shelf, and they're just looking for a chance to implement them. Personally, what I think they're looking for is they need a big event. They need a catastrophe. Now, maybe it's a nuclear war. Maybe it's a massive breakout of a shooting war with whomever, or
cyber attack too.
Cyber attack.
That's what the WEF are saying.
Cyber attack, or maybe a financial crisis.
And that's what I'm saying as well, Ed, is like when you look at the distributed ledgers of the 4,000 odd banks that they have in the United States, if you could rationalize all of that into the blockchain, that would be a good thing.
Okay. A few distinctions we have to make that are important distinctions, and you know these. There are 3 differences between a true cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and the garbage that you see in the name of the Fed coin or the Unicoin. Okay, Bitcoin is immutable. Okay, so the code is what it is, right? And it can't be changed, and it's non-programmable. Okay, you can't program it. Well, these Fed coins, they're not, these other coins, they're not true digital currencies. They're misusing the name.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And so what I'm trying to kind of highlight is that if they can rationalize an entire system with blockchain, that can only be a good thing.
Sure, fine.
If you could rationalize logistics with one entire system that lived on one blockchain, the world will be way more efficient, and you could figure out where stuff was and how stuff would come to you. So blockchains are actually the future of
okay. But I'm thinking you don't actually need digital tokens or currencies in order to achieve that, do you? You can do it. They already have zeros and ones into computers. They don't. Do they actually need a digital?
And that's what I'm saying is that's the next level of it. And the reason that it's the next level is when you understand how blockchains work. Like, so in a Bitcoin blockchain, I do the transaction, it goes into the blockchain and it gets mined. And the mind is a mathematical algorithm. and then there's a consensus across all of the entire blockchain of computers that has actually happened. That's the ledger, right?
Okay. So if the government wanted to do that, I'm sure they could do that. They could do a Bitcoin 2.0 version, for their purposes. But they're not interested in that for one main reason, or two main reasons. The first one is they like to be able to spend as much as they want, right? With Bitcoin, 21 million units. That's all there is. That's all there'll ever be. All right. It's a constraint. They're constrained, right? There's a limited number. That's why they don't like. That's why they took us off the gold standard, because the gold standard restricted their ability to spend money. They don't like that. Right. Yeah. So when this new coin comes, they're not going to lose that ability to print more coins. They will still be able to print as many as they want. So they're not solving that issue, and they're not remotely interested in solving that issue. They want to continue.
We saw that with a couple of crypto crashes in probably 18 months, 2 years ago now. Remember Terra Luna crashed? And the idea of Terra Luna was that, on one side, people would put money into it, and then on the other side, it would burn the excess amounts that were in there. So the amount of Luna that was in there was always equal to the amount that was going in. So essentially, it was like a gold-backed denomination. So if I've got $100 worth of gold, then I've got $100 worth of dollars that I can use, and there's always $100 worth of gold in the bank that backs that $100 bill that's going around. But that system proved not to work. It was proven to be fundamentally flawed, and it collapsed and it imploded. And what you're describing is is like that's the system. They want crypto 2.0 to be a system like that. And it even says it on their website, we're fully backed. We're backed by all of these things. And you're like, okay, cool. So you've got distributed technology that lets you have a blockchain so countries can interact with each other in a more seamless way, in a better way. But then how does that play out in a SWIFT system? Because sanctions are imposed when the SWIFT system is cut off, and you can no longer transact between banks.
That's another
prediction. This has all been circumvented now.
I think within 5 years, the SWIFT system is going to be completely gone.
Yeah, I agree.
It's an antiquated system. It's equivalent to the old pagers people used to carry around. It's old technology. Actually, the Russian/Chinese SIPS system is much more modern and much more efficient, and the BRICS countries are going to be taking advantage of that. But in my opinion, the single most sinister part of the CDPs is the programmability nature of those points, where they're going to be able to program what you spend your money on. First of all, they're going to be able to see exactly what you spend your money on. And if they don't approve of what you're spending your money, they can cut you off. So you think you have $1,000 worth of Fed coins, and you go to buy $1,000 worth of something, and say, "Oh no, sorry, not only that." And I'm sure they're going to have a use it or lose it feature in there. Where
they tried that in China. Yeah. They tried central bank digital currencies in China, and that was the predominant feature of it was the use it or lose it. We're going to issue you it's like almost a universal basic income. We're going to issue that to you, and you've only got 1 week to spend that. And then when you're transacting with the vendors have only got 1 week to resupply stuff and do things. And it's like the idea of it kind of worked in theory, but in practice it didn't work because people have got lives. And
look,
you can't automate that stuff. It doesn't work.
Those people couldn't say, "Oh, I've got a week left. You know what? I think I'll go and buy some gold with it." I said, "Nah." No, you're not going to buy. So this is the kind of world they want us to live in. This is another move toward complete slavery.
You're going to be subjugated. You'll be a subject. You'll be a subject of the technocracy, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
My concern is that we're approaching the jackpot, is the way that I describe it, because a TV show that is like a dystopian future. There's like a pandemic, a nuclear explosion, and the collapse of society. And it's the jackpot of events that cause all of these things. And this is like the jackpot as well, right? So the WEF is predicting massive cyber attack because of world discourse. Now we're on the precipice of World War III. So massive cyber attacks are likely, and we've got a bad actor in Russia that could be blamed or could be the perpetrator of that cyber attack. In fact, and it could actually, in fact, be real, because the Russians, that's their doctrine, to use space cyber, EMP, then nukes. So it could be that that's there. So that's one part of the jackpot. The next part is there's 113 countries of 193 countries that have got these currencies. The Unicoin and the Fedcoin and the versions of the Reserve Banks CBDCs are being launched. And as you say, they're already there. So we're just missing a couple of elements. We're missing that other 74 countries to catch up with their CBDCs. And that can happen in the next 6 months. Because if the technology is already there, it's just a matter of rolling it out in those other countries and implementing it into their legislation and signing it into their laws. So once that jackpot of things comes together, then one of two things that will happen. It'll either happen because of a cyber attack, a world event, or it'll just be rolled out. There's just nothing that we can do about it. And in my mind, I don't think we're any further away than about 12 to 18 months of that actually happening. The world as you know it will change forever, and it will never, ever go back in the next 12 to 18 months.
Oh, I agree. I get that 100%. It's going to happen soon, I think. I was trying to bring up a picture of my first car. I'm thinking about adding one more recommendation to my 3-point list, and that is, you might want to go out and buy a non-computerized car. Go buy
a car that doesn't have a chip of any description in it.
Go buy a car made prior to 1978. Take that car and take it into some guy who can restore it. Do it now, before everyone else does. Do it now and restore it really nicely so it's in a really good condition. Because when that EMP goes off or when the chips aren't available, whatever, you're still going to be able to put gas in that guy and go.
Hey, the gas won't be there anymore. It'll be all gone.
You might want to go to a pawn shop and invest in an old rotary phone. See if you can find an old rotary phone somewhere and something that plugs into the wall.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, right. In the house where my boys, I had a little like telephone booth inside off the kitchen. You go and you close the door, you sit down and had old, and I made it a payphone. So the boys, they wanted to call their friends. They had to put quarters in to call their friends. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Well, Ed, that's enough doom and gloom for one morning for me and one afternoon for you. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your insights and your knowledge, mate. It's absolutely invaluable. And hopefully people are getting the unspoken truth and they understand what's going on here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not following us on Spotify, Twitter, Telegram, and Rumble, please come on over and check that out. You can find all of the links and everything that we've talked about in today's show notes. That pretty much wraps it up for today's show. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. It's bye for now.